Fernando Mendoza is going to be the number one overall pick in this April's NFL draft. That is a fact. I'm not going to dispute that. I don't believe that he is going to walk in, though, immediately and resurrect a bad organization and lift them to the heights of heaven, shall we say, if I just want to maintain the biblical metaphor there. He is going to be a guy that needs a little bit of time in the NFL. He didn't throw at the combine. That's okay. The combine is not meant for guys to throw at. It's not. The combine is meant to meet players. That's it. Like, we celebrate the 40 times because it's cool. We celebrate the vertical jumps because it's cool. Bench presses because it's cool. But the combine is about getting everybody in one central location, meeting with teams, coaches, other players potentially that could become teammates, and then also kind of gossiping, getting the rumor run. Hey, what is a certain team feeling like they're going to do in free agency? How does that affect what we're going to do in free agency? Hey, who does a certain guy want to go to as far as a team is concerned? How does that impact how we view him? How does that impact what we are going to do if he becomes available at our spot? Like, it's about information. Information is currency in the NFL. But what we have learned with Fernando Mendoza, what I have learned with Fernando Mendoza, is he checks every single box. He checks every single box from an IQ standpoint, from a teammate standpoint, from a competitive leader standpoint. But when I watch him with my eyes, there's still a few boxes that I'm not 100% sure that he does check. And I always like to do this thing where I compare them to guys of years previous, of quarterbacks in specific. I feel like it's the easiest position to compare on a year-by-year basis to. And say, hey, how would this player stack up if he was in this class? And I do believe that if Fernando Mendoza had the season that he did and just happened to come out last year, he would have been the number one overall pick. I think you take Fernando Mendoza over Cam Ward when he came out of Miami. I think he would have been the number one overall pick in that draft. The year before then is where things start to get a little dicey, because that was the most loaded quarterback class that we've seen in a very, very long time. So I think you're taking Caleb Williams over Fernando Mendoza. I think you're taking Jaden Daniels over Fernando Mendoza. You're taking Drake May over Mendoza. And then you get to the conversation of like a Michael Penix or a J.J. McCarthy. And I know Michael Penix didn't win the Heisman Trophy his senior season or his final season at Washington. That obviously went to Jaden Daniels. But I think people forget how much of a dog Michael Penix was in college because he hasn't been very good in the NFL. And that's fine if you're looking at it purely from an NFL lens. But Penix was the really, really good prospect coming out of college if he fell to the right system. And you were hoping that Atlanta was going to be that. But when it comes to a natural thrower of the football, Penix was one of the best that we have seen, right? He was accurate down the field. Great deep ball, could throw over the middle of the field, could throw at the sideline. I think there would have been a real conversation to be had there with Mendoza and with Michael Penix. Maybe you lean Mendoza, maybe you lean Michael Penix. That's up to you and your personal, how you see the game. But I think that's where the conversation would have started to take place in that draft class. You're taking Penix, or you're taking Mendoza over J.J. McCarthy, bar none. You're taking him over Bo Nix, bar none. The Michael Penix, though, I think there might have been a little bit of a discussion to be had there. And then you kind of go back year by year by year, right? Like the Trevor Lawrence here, you're going to take Trevor Lawrence over Fernando Mendoza. Maybe you take Zach Wilson. Here's the thing. Zach Wilson now in the NFL, not very good, right? We've seen this. We know this. We don't need to see more of it. At BYU, though, he was an electrifying player. I never really bought into the Zach Wilson hype. It just wasn't my bag, wasn't my cup of tea. I kind of knew at the time what BYU was as a football program. They have elevated now. Please don't come for me, BYU fans. They've elevated their program now. But at the time when Zach Wilson was there, they weren't all that impressive to me. And he did some cool things, but he did some cool things that you're watching. You're like, that is not going to work in the NFL. That was kind of when everybody was trying to be Patrick Mahomes. So they're trying to do all these like super off-platform throws, super off-schedule, throwing across the field, like all that stuff that you knew if you watch NFL football, that is not going to work for everybody. In fact, Mahomes is such a big deal because it should not be working for him, and it does. So I take Mendoza over Zach Wilson. The interesting draft would then have been the Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud draft. because where does Mendoza factor in to there? I think from a personality standpoint, he would win you over more than those two guys. Not that they have bad personalities, but Fernando Mendoza, from a personality standpoint, is such an easy guy to root for because it's almost like he's too nice for his own good. Like, I don't know how to describe it. He's too innocent. Like, he feels innocent. He's too innocent for his own good, and that could be appealing because you think he's literally just going to be watching film. Like, I don't know what he does for nightlife. I don't know that he has a nightlife. I think he watches film. And if you're trying to build an organization and draft your franchise cornerstone, it would be appealing to me to draft a guy that literally doesn't do anything. Hey, you're going to go home and you're going to maybe stop by like Cookout, and then you're going to go watch film. I think Mendoza would be an interesting guy to pair up against like a Bryce Young and a C.J. Stroud. Bryce Young in the NFL, the height has been a severe limitation, but he was disgusting in college. Like, disgusting in college. The accuracy was insane. And it's the throws that like a Bryce Young would make that I was desperately wanting to see from Fernando Mendoza. And he just didn't in college. He made big plays when his team needed to have big plays be made. The game against Ohio State, that over-the-shoulder throw on a big-time possession late in the game, that was massive. He excels in comeback routes, which is a tough throw to make, but that's something I noticed. The back shoulder, the comeback route, like Fernando Mendoza throws a hell of a ball when it comes to that play design. He can run, he can do a bunch of different things, but when it comes to the elite of the elite, I don't know that he's walking into an NFL franchise and immediately taking them from the number one overall pick and elevating them all the way up to a team that's going to be picking in the 20s because they won 10 games and they made it to the playoffs for the first time in quite some time, right? I just don't see that. And you can pair him with Tom Brady and nurture that over years to maybe in year number 2, year number 3, you start to see that. But I just don't think, like, Jane Daniels and C.J. Stroud are very much in every way, shape, or form the anomaly. You are not supposed to come in and take a team that was drafting super high in the NFL draft and immediately make them awesome. That is not how that's supposed to go. With Stroud, you drafted Will Anderson in there as well, and you had some really talented wide receivers out there. But a large majority of what happened successfully for Stroud and Houston in his rookie year was on the basis of him. And the same exact thing for Jane Daniels. Didn't have a great year number 2. That Commanders roster was not very good outside of like Terry McLaurin, but Jane Daniels elevated everybody. I don't know that Mendoza is that. I just don't. I don't see that when I watch him. I don't see that. I think his Indiana team was good. I don't think they were excellent, but I also didn't think there was a lot of excellent teams in college football in general this year, the way that they have been in years past, to properly judge him. Like, I remember watching Joe Burrow, who's a name that has been kind of compared to Fernando Mendoza a little bit, mostly because they won the Heisman Trophy. But I remember watching Joe Burrow at LSU, and I'm thinking, this guy's obviously the number one overall pick. He is slicing and dicing everybody, and he's going to be great in the NFL because the offense that they're running can be run in the NFL, and he's going to be awesome. He gets to a Super Bowl in year number 2. Now, injuries have kind of deterred him a little bit. The Bengals' defense has deterred him a little bit. I thought Joe Burrow was going to be awesome. He walked in, and he was pretty awesome in year number 2. Maybe Mendoza has that, kind of like the Joe Burrow, the Drake May in year number 2. I'm going to be really, really good, but it's going to take a little bit of time. I'm not as over the moon with, well, he's really good in a press conference, so he gets it. He's obviously going to be great. I'm not. I need to see it on the field, and it always felt like when I was watching him in relation to some of these other players that there was just a little bit left to be desired still. That there was just a little bit missing, and they were winning games, so who really cared? And his objective was to win a national championship. That's fair. But when you're elevating guys and making the jump from college to the professionals, I wanted a little bit more from Fernando Mendoza, and it felt like I never got that. But he's going to be mentored by Tom Brady, and that means a whole lot. It means a whole lot as far as I'm concerned because Tom Brady is really, really good, and it's very clear that Tom Brady is now very involved with what is going on in Las Vegas. More on that in a second. But I want you to hear from Fernando Mendoza. This was Fernando Mendoza on what it's going to be like to be potentially mentored by Tom Brady when Vegas eventually takes him number 1 overall.
Yeah, I mean, who hasn't admired Tom Brady? The guy has, more Super Bowl rings than anybody. So that opportunity would be fantastic. Tom Brady, I believe, is the greatest quarterback of all time by a wide margin, and to be able to have the opportunity to be mentored by him would it would mean so much, and especially to learn. And I'm all about learning. So from day one, I got to learn a lot, and it's going to be a long journey. And to potentially have a mentor like that would be pretty impressive and pretty meaningful.
Joe Montana fans are seething. What do you mean a wide margin? Tom Brady's better by a wide margin than Joe Montana? Yes, he is. But again, he checks that box so well. I think he gives great effort. I think he's a smart kid. He's never going to give up, a tough season, bad play. I think he's going to be right back out there. But I think I'm being poisoned. Not literally. But I think I'm being mentally poisoned by the term generational. I hate that word. I hate it. I think it's the worst. And I think too many people rush to call quarterbacks generational. And I don't buy it. I think there are such a few small, limited amount of quarterbacks or players in general that are legitimately generational. When you break that word down to its simplest form, it means once in a generation, and a generation's a long time. But there are 3 quarterbacks that I think have been legitimately generational. And I heard somebody call Fernando Mendoza on the mothership generational. I think it was McAfee, but it was somebody else too. They called him generational, and I immediately was just I'm triggered by that. I'm saying no. The 3 generational quarterbacks that we have seen in the last 15 years are Andrew Luck, Trevor Lawrence, and Caleb Williams. And Mendoza's not that. You don't have to be generational to be a great player. Stroud was not. Jaden Daniels was not. Bo Nix was not. He's had success. You don't have to be generational to be a great player, but I just hate positioning a guy as generational as you're trying to make this point about, oh, I really like him. You can just tell me that you really like him. You don't have to stretch the truth to say, oh, he's this generational prospect, as if we've never seen a guy like Fernando Mendoza. We've seen plenty of guys like him. But with Lawrence, he was the number 1 overall pick after his freshman year. Then he played 2 more seasons, and he was still the number 1 overall pick. That's a really difficult thing to do. Andrew Luck was in a similar spot. He could have been the number 1 overall pick in 2011. He came back, played another year, and guess what? He was still the number 1 overall pick, even ahead of Robert Griffin, who had this crazy Heisman year at Baylor. Same thing with Caleb Williams. He replaces Spencer Rattler, who was supposed to be the number 1 pick that year. That didn't work out. He replaces Spencer Rattler, plays well, gets the job at USC when Lincoln Riley takes the job at USC, has this crazy Heisman year. Oh, this guy's going to be the number 1 overall pick next year. And then still was the number 1 overall pick, despite the fact that Jaden Daniels had a crazy year. So the ability to continually position yourself as the number 1 overall pick for years, plural, is to me what defines a guy that's generational, because we saw it and then we continue to see it over the course of years, where oftentimes we see it one year and then a guy falters a little bit. Spencer Rattler's an example of that. Carson Beck is an example of that. Sam Howell, the list goes on and on and on of guys that were projected top 5 picks that didn't become that. Again, that's not to say you need to be that to be good, but in just hearing, hey, I think Mendoza is a generational player, and then him not being a I cannot make that sort of math compute in my brain.